Oh my God. Oh, this heat is absolutely terrible. I can't even bear it any longer. Oh no. We're rolling, Philip. Oh my God. Philip! Hello, everyone. Hello, welcome to another recording. Welcome to another video. It is I, your Lord, your Master, your Savior, Mediaphile, and I am here to bring you another dose of madness, another dose of the real cure for the book. No vaccine needed, for I am the vaccine. No, but honestly, all of you, I encourage you all of you to, behave yourselves properly and to be healthy, of course. But I am here, and I am hot, obviously speaking. And right, yes, so I'm wearing my typical robe, which I believe I have to perhaps undo a bit because it is disgustingly warm and humid where I am in the Midwest, believe it or not, on the run still. And I had an issue before. There was some, avid followers. I said hello. I went to a meet and greet, believe it or not, on the cliffs of, I forgot where the hell it was. I can't disclose it, obviously, because I have to protect my fans, because they are my fans and people don't like me. So I I have to sort of come up with sort of elaborate ruses and ideas for things or whatever. Hello, skin. And I am honestly, rather tired of all the running, but honestly, it's keeping me in shape, and I think I've lost a few pounds, so I think I might keep it on for a bit longer. But seriously, though, for those of you who are joining me, perhaps for your first time, or perhaps if you are a returning visitor, welcome again. I don't know why you have the first time, but if you're first time, hello and welcome to the fold, where we welcome our ladies, our lords, our men, our women, our whatevers, our winners, our losers, our wizards, our lizards, White House shout out. And of course, the myriad of morons, of miscreants and misfits and the degenerates, and of course, my rats. I'm so happy to have all of you here today. I'm so happy to have all of you here with me because we're going to be talking about a variety of subjects. Now, on this channel, I try to, let everyone know that what I talk about are things that are important to me, things that I think are fascinating, quite interesting. They involve the magical world, of course, things like mythology, even involving things in your world. The monsters or beasts that you've heard of, even things like deities, which people get a bit sensitive about. And, things like spirits, what they are, hypothetically speaking, well, not hypothetically, theoretically speaking, I should say. Because this is a theoretical channel, as well as it is one where we dive into myths, we tell stories, have I told them before, the things that happen from my day-to-day, within the mundane, within the magical. And of course, every now and then I like to talk about things that I've noticed. I am an avid fan of things like anime, movies, even things like video games. I do play music. I like to do a bit of dancing. So I have a bit of everything. I'm a whore. Cut that. Oh. But no, seriously though. I do a lot of things, a lot of entertainment things, The art thing is sort of my business. My business is bardic in nature. A lot of things that involve bards, and bards like to do a lot of things. They are not patrons, they are performers of the arts. They're sort of the vessel for the artistic talents and spirits to go inside of. And a lot of times their talents include things like visual art, audio art, even things like performative or physical arts. They do a lot of things like singing. Dancing, which is a physical portion. Some of them they tell stories, some of them act as spies, other ones are fairly good swordsmen and things of that nature. So it's a mixed bag, but people many times call me a jack of all trades, or some people like to call me Jack as a nickname. My name is it's not really media, that's sort of the name of the channel. I don't know if I've mentioned my name before, but perhaps at a later date, just to keep my anonymity level. So today, I believe I will go into the first subject after introducing the channel. I have a lot of things here, things I can talk about. One thing I remember, look, I understand that I told you I was going to make potions. I'm not a potion maker. So I do have the vessels for them, and I will make them. So when I make them, you will find out about it, okay? And I have my own theories and ideas and applications of things like potions and of that matter. If you have any sort of questions about them, I can refer to what I understand from it, what I've observed, what I have studied, and references to other people that I watch that are a bit more knowledgeable in this sort of field than I am. My special type of media, or I believe elements, also involves things like, things like practical magics, or even things like spiritual magics. I like to, talk with things like spirits or things of that nature, focus energies, magic things, try to harness or harbor the energies that lie beyond the veil, things that, speak to us differently, how the mundane things we have in our lives are actually applications of magic, or I believe derivative forms of magical devices. Things like phones or cameras are just like scry mirrors or scry balls. Things like medicine are essentially potions. And even things that we do not consider magic really are things like music, things like art, things like dance. There's a lot of things that we do, on our day-to-day life that we do not consider magical in the slightest. But it is simply a change of perspective that is required for you to understand perfectly. And magic can even stem from things like religions. Religions that, practice certain things or rituals or, any sort of thing that they do are technically things that magical practitioners do. Now, the realm from where I come from, is a lot more elaborate, a lot more realistic. It's not like how magic is a bit muted and it sort of transformed itself in a way to exist in your world in a certain aspect that won't cause chaos or harm to anyone else. But it is a real thing, but it takes on a different form of iteration here. That is the most crazy thing about magic, and why magic is something that is a bit more alive, because it sort of changes and transforms itself depending on where it is. Whether it's in a different universe, in a different world, whatever it may be, or realm, that is magic present. And when magic is not present, you have to analyze the realm and see why. So there's all those aspects. Okay, so let me take a breather. Okay, so I'm sorry. So I believe inspiration. Yes. So the topic I'm going to talk about today, I know I sort of ramble on a bit about religions or things like magic or whatever. And I have a list of other things to talk about. I'm going to be talking about illusions. Yes, illusions. And what illusions are, and if they are really sources of magic, or if they are things that are, more mental or psychological. Now, the thing about illusions, that illusions, from, many old practitioners of magic, or things like black magic, or things like magicians, go hand in hand with magic. Illusions are things that are projected in a way to make things appear real when they're not. And in a most basic sense, an illusion is something that you see, or that you feel, or that you hear, that never really happened, existed, or you didn't really hear. It was something that either your mind psychologically gave to you out of nowhere, it was self-projected, or it was projected onto you by magical means. And this is where we sort of get into that sort of, strange gray area, where we're not really sure what to think, what to do, or how to handle sort of situations. But that is why I'm here. So, when regarding things like illusions, the first thing I believe I can talk about what an illusion is, which I believe I've already stated. And I believe how are illusions most common, or I believe where they are most common. And illusions tend to be a lot more common in places where the mind is, I believe, at its neutral point, where the mind isn't sure, where the mind isn't projecting or reinforcing reality or emphasizing fantasy, though the fantasy portion can perhaps enhance it. But, when you're enhancing fantasy within your own mind, and this can be brought on by things like psychedelics or things of that nature, which I can get into a different video about, it sort of allows the mind to sort of escape the reality that you're in and able to perceive things or to project things into you, for your own eyes as, being real, when in reality, technically speaking, we have to do quotation marks because reality can be somewhat of a... It's a contextual thing. It's not always what you appear. It is. People live a reality, and it's not really reality. But I don't want to digress too much into that. But when it comes to things like illusions, we have to pay in mind, and we have to, keep in mind, I believe is what I'm trying to say, that, there are lots of things that we see on a day-to-day, things that we have seen, heard, or felt that are aspects of an illusion, but are not real. Now, how can you tell an illusion apart? You have to do tests, things like how people typically pinch themselves, slap themselves to ensure that they're not in some sort of trance or things like a dream. because, things like physical touch can sort of help override the reality you're experiencing within your mind through your eyes. Even things like smell, when you're in your mind and you're closed and you can't really whatever, perhaps a sense of smell can sort of, bring you out of that sort of trance or out of that dream, out of that illusion. And so a way for you to know whether or not you're in an illusion is to pretty much test all the areas you can, physical, things like smells, things like what you hear, even things like taste. And if any of those things seem a bit off or strange to you, you could perhaps be in an illusion or you have the coronavirus, so get tested. But no, these are serious matters and serious things, because there are many people that have lived within an illusion their whole life, becoming delusional, and they project their illusion onto others, and they sort of, what's the word? They sort of usurp their followers or their comrades' minds, and it sort of helps shift their perspective and their imagination to their level. The issue with that is that not everyone's body, or I believe their self or their spirit, is attuned or accustomed to certain types of illusions. There are certain hallucinations, where I will talk about in a moment, that are products of illusions of the person's mind that will not translate well into another person. Like when you come to things like fears, not everyone is scared of the same thing. You have many common fears, like people are scared of spiders or mundane things like that. But if you have a person that's specifically afraid of something, by them projecting that fear onto another person can sort of not work if they're trying to cement that illusion. So they will try to cement pieces of their illusion into reality to sort of reinforce their reality onto the reality of their victims or to whoever they're speaking to. This usually happens to people that are delusional about certain things, and they see things that sort of confirm their delusion or, or their imagination, things of that nature. But the thing like delusional is not really the same as something like illusions. People think it's the same sort of thing. But delusional usually derives from someone that has a, what's the right word? Psychosomatic, or they have a certain internal idea or logic that they're sort of living or believing when it's sort of bereft of reality. They are living outside of what's actually factually real, that can be proved, that can be felt, or everything else. And they are living an entirely different lifestyle that is sort of denying that reality or living parallel to that reality. But it is sort of, becoming a detriment to perhaps themselves or to others around them. Things like imagination can be, very dangerous in that aspect. But when it comes to things like illusions, they are a lot more personal. The people that are capable of, projecting illusions on a mass-wide scale are people that you know as magicians. These are people that are, aware of how the eye behaves, how the mind looks, and how logic sort of creeps in. So they sort of help manipulate the eyes. They sort of try to divert your senses to different aspects to sort of weaken your sort of psychological state, your mental stability. When that happens, you start to believe things that aren't really there, see things that aren't really there. Did that person really pull a card out of their mouth? I never saw them put it once in there. Things of that nature. Did you really see the card, or was it perhaps a trick of the mind that's sort of, redoing this thing? Or, are they perhaps real mages? Who knows? I'm not one to divulge in magician's secrets. I don't practice magic in that sort of flashy manner. Mine is a bit more spiritual, a bit more subdued, a bit more secretive, and seductive. But it is a very interesting concept when you think about it. So the things like illusions, for example, are things that are sort of in your mind. They're not projected outwards too much, but they kind of have sort of overlapping aspects, An illusion can sort of transform itself into a hallucination. A hallucination, for example, my definition, mind you, is a perhaps an illusion that has been projected from the mind into reality. It is sort of something that is sort of real. You're seeing this sort of thing, and it remains real to you. Sort of, it's causing you to behave erratically when you can see everything else. Usually illusions happen when you're by yourself and there's no other interrupting forces that can sort of cancel out that illusion. But a hallucination is an illusion that's a lot more strong, that's a lot more reinforced, and it's something that is typically projected by the mind for whatever reason. Like, let's say, for example, you're among family or friends, and then out of nowhere, you see a sort of beast or something walk right by you. And to you, it is the most realistic thing you've ever seen. And it is real, and no one else seems to notice or care. But it is sort of driving you perhaps into a panic of some kind because, one, you've either never seen this thing, or two, you have seen it, but haven't seen it acting or behaving in the world that you're in. And it is sort of conflicting with your mind's ability to denote reality from fiction or from imagination or things like illusions. I've had perhaps a hallucination before, several years ago. And believe it or not, a hallucination in me happened when my mind was at its most, like I said, weakened state when I was sleeping. And so, like, let's say, for example, and this kind of happened sometimes. This is where sort of daydreaming sort of, comes into the picture. But for example, in my dream, I was perhaps outside in a car, something of some kind. I put out my hand. There's a butterfly that lands on it. But then a butterfly grows immensely large, almost very scary looking, misshapen or whatever. I tried to get it off my hand. It doesn't work. So my mind, it was my mind, because I've done it before. My mind or my spirit was trying to get me out of this sort of weird situation. That it was very panic inducing. I sort of, have built internal walls within myself because I don't want to lose sleep and I don't want to have these sort of experiences because they can sort of bleed into real life. But there was an issue with, the warding and everything else, and it sort of canceled out my sleeping cycle, but my mind still maintained the illusion or the hallucination. When I woke up out of my bed, the illusion was still there. The hallucination was there. It was real. I was seeing it in the air above me. I freaked out. I jumped out of the bed and I kept staring at it, and it was still there, airborne. This is a real story, by the way. I'm not bullshitting you. It was a real thing. I was looking at it, and it was perhaps a few seconds. It was just hovering there above my head. It was a dream made manifest into the physical world. And so I stared at this sort of thing. And so after a few blinks and my mind sort of waking up, I believe the illusion dissipated. And it is that sort of thing that you have to, keep in mind. So hallucinations and things like illusions can go hand in hand, are in a sort of part are the same thing. But an illusion is something that is a lot more, I don't want to say mundane. It is something that is a bit more muddled, a bit more subdued. A hallucination is something that is a lot stronger. It is a lot more realistic. It is when the illusion attains, I believe, it attains a more physical approach, a more physical aspect. And this can be dangerous. It sort of leads people to do very dangerous things that are not, obviously safe, but things that are quite strange, really. And it is something you have to keep out for, keep a look on. So how do you reduce the effects of an illusion, perhaps a hallucination? Sort of break out of a hallucination, it can be quite tricky because some hallucinations can last for a while depending on what it is. But it is testing the senses, testing your body, testing your mind. Reinforcing reality helps rid yourself of the hallucination, of the illusion. So when someone's there with you, it can help. If you are there by yourself, you need to do things that would happen in real life to sort of help your mind understand that you are in reality, that you are in your world, that you are within the mundane. If you do not do this, it can be incredibly hard and difficult for your mind to for future purposes, understand and distinguish between reality and fiction. And that's when you get into problems. That's when things like schizophrenia become a bit of a symptom. That's when you sort of, people think you're crazy, in certain aspects. And I believe in opinion, a controversial take is, well, what if they're not insane? What if this thing actually does exist, but it is not within the rules of your realm? And that's another issue. And to comment on that, it is entirely possible. For example, let's say, because our mind shields us from all sorts of things. And so the mind shields you from bad dreams, things from hallucinations, things like illusions. It helps reinforce yourself to not only give yourself comfort, but to function within society. But when the barriers within your mind that are meant to shield you from things it deems better for you not to see are taken down, that's when fiction starts to blend into reality. The difference is that what lies within the fiction, or believe within the fantasy, or believe within the illusion, is in a different realm. Your eyes are sort of have a shield among them to sort of shield you from seeing these sort of things, because it is believed that they can, breed sort of bad aspects. It can cause a panic, can induce nightmares, things like horrors. It can get you to do a lot of, demonstrable things that, no one really agrees with or likes. So when it comes to things like illusions, things like hallucinations, reinforcing your reality is key. Now, I am a mage, and so I am aware of things like illusions or things like hallucinations. I am by no means delusional. I am very much clearly in reality, but I have the mind to sort of seep into the other world if I need to understand that things outside my realm of understanding can in fact and do exist. However, I'm from a different realm, so I already know about these things, and these things are inherently strange to me. But what is curious and what is important to understand is that, you as a person are essentially a vessel. You're a spirit that came from somewhere else. You're essentially two realms within one. So a part of you can perceive and feel things from, the other realm, versus another part of you, which is your body. Your corporeal form is able to perceive things and feel things as they are here. And so it is also believed that, when you dream, your mind is sort of awakening, branching out, and going into that other realm, into that other reality. The mind itself can transcend time when you consider the fact that it is a different realm, a different universe, something that is perhaps outside of our normal scope, out of our normal understanding of how things are supposed to work. And so when the mind is asleep and when it is awoken and leaves sort of, I guess, the corporeal form, it sort of goes to recharge, sort of how robots have software. The robot itself is hardware. The electricity, the microchip, the, Wi-Fi, whatever it is software. It sort of leaves its main vessel completely, and it sort of leaves and it goes to a server to download whatever. It sort of goes into that, a sort of different reality. And it sort of learns things, it attains things, it brings things back to you that you otherwise didn't know, or that would make you consider your actions. Like, for example, sometimes, and it's happened many times, my mind will perceive things in the future that have not yet come to pass, perhaps for me to be aware of or to understand these certain things. However, without a properly trained mind, and exercising these sort of things, you won't really know what to do until that time comes. And your mind is like, do you remember when I told you this? You're like, yes, I remember. I know in the MCU, for example, this is a quick tangent, it sort of said things like those dreams you have are perhaps your different selves in other universes that sort of travel at a time that is quicker before yours. And what you're seeing is perhaps what they saw before their end, or I guess before they decided to sleep or something happened. I can't confirm or deny that. That is a theory. And like I said, that is outside the realms of my knowledge, because I only know about a few realms, and that is it, of what I am capable of. But I believe it is possible. However, I believe it is perhaps more likely that since time is something that is, non-physical and exists outside within a different reality, and since there is a different world within that reality, time can sort of coexist, but it sort of falls along the line of that reality at a different pace than yours does. When you go to sleep and when your mind is sort of awakened, or perhaps your spirit leaves or whatever, it is in a form, or I believe in an element that is capable of traveling that line, that is able to sort of filter into that other realm, into that other world. And so when it goes into there, it is able to melt, it is able to see, and it is able to feel and relate to you how it felt like, but in a more diminished manner. Why? Because your primary way of understanding pain or feeling is in a corporeal form, and it is a lot more visceral. When your spirit or when your mind does it, it is drastically limited in its sort of feeling. It is, perhaps some say it is a safety mechanism, but I believe it could perhaps be just because, the way your mind understands pain or feeling is because it is from your corporeal form. So it understands things and receives information differently. When it's in a different element, or when its form or software is uploaded, it is a different animal altogether. You cannot upload a hardware into a software. It doesn't work that way. Hardware is perhaps the physical body, the vessel that the software resides in. It is a completely different animal, a completely different element, a completely different origin material. For those of you who remember. But it is something for all of you to, I believe, consider when you think about things like illusions, even things like dreams. Dreams are inherently illusions, sometimes projected from our minds in order for us to understand and sort of navigate things that perhaps causing us some disarray. Nightmares are the things made more real, but they tend to be things that sort of, awake your perspective, sort of, they sort of force you to do better. They sort of, force you awake, especially if it's very traumatic. It's what the mind, it's what your internal wards do to protect your person, to protect your spirit. Okay? So there's that aspect when I'm thinking about those sort of things. Now, I was going to talk about something, I guess rather quickly, since I'm sort of finishing up here. But I'm trying to remember what that sort of thing was, because for the life of me, I can't seem to remember. But it was in regards to things like elements, things like dreams, what dreams are, how to get yourself out of it. I remember now. It is simply if something is projected onto your person, like if it's given to you for specific reasons. Now, some practitioners, those of you who dabble in certain types of arts, and especially things like illusions or in the more, shadow workings of that sort of aspect, are capable of projecting and reinforcing illusions within your mind into reality. The trick to get others to see it is to sort of allow your mind to invade another person, sort of the energy you give off. Think of it as an EMF, an electromagnetic field that is essentially felt by everyone, your hair stand on. And things in the environment can feel it and are affected by it. Think of it as a sort of bubble you give off. When you sort of walk into another person's, bubble, and let's say theirs is not active, because it can happen a lot, your bubble starts to override and sort of change the environment that the person's body has. I'm trying to sort of word it in a way that's more understandable, that makes more sense. It is sort of overriding the body's senses, that it detects this EMF, but because it is not native to it, the mind is trying to rationalize and think about what it is, and it is trying to understand it. That is what's happening when that sort of thing occurs. But the thing is, when a person who practices these sort of things are knowledgeable in this fact, and even receive the help of spirits, they first try to attempt it when you are sleeping or dreaming, because it is when your mind is most vulnerable, because your body is sort of quiet. Your body is sort of acts as a shield against those certain things. But when your mind is open and when your spirit is free, because some people do projections, things of that nature, which isn't the safest thing to do, but it is possible. It sort of allows them, if they find a person or a target, they can identify it, see where they are, and sort of worm their way into that person's mindset and sort of conquer the mind. And if they are knowledgeable enough in their own craft, they can use their magic to sort of create these illusions and to start, seeding them within your mind, getting you to believe in them a lot more strongly. And so when you wake up, the likelihood of you seeing these sort of things becomes more and more likely. It becomes more serious. And so you sort of see these things. And so then, as you see an illusion, and when you create the hallucinations, you can see the hallucinations, and then you can cause others to see them as well. And some people have used this technique as a way to drive others mad, or to just bring them over to their cause. That's how some religions are formed. That is how they are made. It is a sort of mass-wide hysteria that sort of occurs when these sort of things happen. But like I said, the best way to break out of it, if you're not a practitioner like myself or anything of that nature, is to not only create wards to help reinforce your reality, to help, reinforce your spirit and your mind. You need to test your body, test your senses, and you need to sort of understand where the solution came from, this hallucination, and why. Because it can catch many people off guard if they've never seen it before. If you have, you can sort of rationalize where you've seen it and how, perhaps. But if it is something new, that is when you have to sort of, worry a bit, because you could be attacked. You are probably being attacked by someone or something. Spirits can do this all the time, but it's simply reinforcing your reality. So when you're faced with an illusion, it is important for you to understand what reality is as you understand it, and what this is as you understand it or don't understand it. Okay? So, and you sort of have to allow the mind to sort of work things out, but you can use your spirit to help you when that sort of thing happens. But like I said, I highly recommend you creating wards, creating amulets, creating sort of such a thing, sort of fueling your magic, sort of re-cementing your sense of reality when you're sleeping if you want to. But you have to understand that this should be a temporary thing and not always, because it is how people sort of break out of magic, and it is how people lose things like dreams, aspirations, and even lose ability to sort of manifest certain things that they would want in their life. So make sure you keep these things, close to your chest, Keep it in mind. It's very important. So, without further more delay, thank you so much for listening. I sure hope that this sort of explanation of this dive into illusions sort of didn't perhaps, confuse any of you. There are a lot of things sort of running through my mind as I'm trying to understand this in a certain way that is understandable, acceptable, easily digestible. But these sort of things tend to happen with me. I love to talk. But I encourage all of you to sort of, practice these sort of things. If you are nervous about certain illusions or hallucinations, Make yourself a ward, an amulet of some kind that sort of reinforce reality, that strengthen the barriers you have. Imagine barriers outside your body. Imagine them around your mind. Shield yourself from the sort of influences that are not welcome, okay? When you're taking things like psychedelics, which I'll probably go into a later video, understand that you are allowing your mind and your spirit or whatever to traverse from reality into a different type of reality, which in this one is a fantasy, but over there is reality. So this is your mind understanding it. Because the last thing you want is to go into shock and to have issues, because those things can happen if you're not careful. So I hope all of you are, that you remain safe, that you practice in safety, whether it's sex or magic, that you are encouraging, that you are constantly harnessing your craft, that you are being kind to others, to yourself, that you are looking forward to things like inspiration, things to allow your dreams to flourish and grow. And I encourage all of you to, keep a mental attitude, a mental beat on certain things. And to remember that there are people out there that do care for you, that find you absolutely attractive and breathable, and who have your best interests at heart. But do not be disillusioned or delusional to think that no one out there wishes to cause you harm. Those sort of things are real and in fact do happen. But I have all the hope, all the love, and all the wonder for all of you to, find yourselves, find your passions, find your power, which is important, and learn how to utilize it for your betterment. I am Mediaphile, your Lord, your Master, your Savior, your friend, and your lover in certain aspects. Feel free to dream about me. And remember that, illusions aren't too bad unless they're really good, okay? Goodbye. I don't give a shit.